for questions.
All right. Hi, guys. Welcome. This is the first night that Nancy and I are in the same place, and Nancy's misbehaving.
I am totally misbehaving. I'm sorry.
So we'll see if we can get through this broadcast tonight without Nancy misbehaving. See if we can follow the rules. So you were out of town last week.
Yes, we took a little trip to the Biltmore Estate in Nashville.
Yeah. Cool.
Very, very relaxing. Love the Biltmore. I wonder if it's in the social studies standards.
You wonder if it's in the social studies standards. Well, that's a great.
If the Vanderbilts made it, or did they get canceled?
Were they white?
Yeah.
Then it's probably not.
Well, it's interesting because not the North Carolina portion of the family, but I read a book about a side of the Vanderbilt family that actually were very instrumental in getting women's suffrage passed, and they were huge advocates. So they weren't just sitting there in their mansions; they were out.
They were doers.
They were doers.
All right. Well, we're going to speak about some doers in the DPI tonight. Some real doers. So breaking news. We've got a lot of breaking news. The first thing I wanted to tell you is that, I didn't need to tell you guys this. Education First Alliance and me specifically and Nancy specifically had gotten our butts kicked all over the place with DPI, telling people that we're liars, we're shams, we're not who we say we are. We're paid professional actors getting paid six figures to do this. We're not really concerned mothers. And that's always been a lie. We've always told you it's been a lie. But now we find out that the right-hand man to Catherine Truitt is none other than Jamie Falkenberry, who has a wife who represents, she's a lobbyist, a registered lobbyist with the state, the Secretary of State. She's repping two companies that are education companies that are promoting critical race theory products. And a third company, which is in-school behavioral health companies, which are involved in the surveys and the SEL we've been talking about. So Jamie Falkenberry has been speaking about us and lying about us and saying we're lying, we're get paid six-figure salaries. And as it turns out, he hasn't been honest at all, and his wife is getting paid a six-figure salary. So when we titled this, DPI is corrupt, we meant DPI is corrupt. So we've been telling you guys for the last 4 months what is going on up at the DPI. We've had people that you would think were on our side of the aisle telling you, parents and teachers and everybody else in our movement, telling you to stop looking at the state. There's nothing to see here. You need to fight this at the district level, which is partially true. Mm-hmm. You need to fight this at the district level. Anyone that tells you DPI can do anything, don't listen to them. Well, it turns out DPI can do one hell of a lot. They're corrupt, and we are kind of redeeming ourselves, if you will, tonight, because the real liars happen to be in the DPI. And so we're going to tell you now what's going on with the social studies standards, because, again, we were told one thing, Nancy. Yeah. What is going on?
Well, I've always kind of had an interest in the social studies standards, and when that glossary came out preliminarily ahead of their June meeting, sorry, a little louder. When that glossary came out ahead of time, the preemptive glossary came out ahead of time in the June meeting, I immediately saw that it was incredibly biased and wrote about it. And then Terry Stoops did excellent work tracking down that it was actually essentially plagiarized from CRT websites. And so the DPI had to do in its presentation to the state Board of Education, essentially had to do a 180 because there were no citations and all of this information had come out, and they had to redo the glossary. So they turned the glossary around in, I don't know, like a week and a half or so, and presented it a few weeks later. But the interesting thing is, I still wasn't really satisfied with it. And now there's a term in there under identity, gender identity, which originally we've been told had been struck from the standards, but now the term gender identity is in the glossary defined with the citation. And the other issue is systemic racism supposedly had been struck from the standards originally. Now it's passed in this newest glossary, defined systemic racism under racism.
So I'm going to put that up for you guys in a second. I want to, we're going to share our screen here, but I want to talk to you about the enormity of what we're talking about here. So when we're talking about the glossary, and this is what we have right here. The glossary is everything. So the glossary is exactly a breakdown for teachers of what they can expect because they're going to be teaching this stuff. So if it's in the glossary, it is in everything from K-12 in the teaching materials. And so Catherine Truitt gained a lot of trust in a lot of people and made a lot of ballyhoo about, oh, well, once we come up with the unpacking documents, which the DPI is responsible for, right? We don't get a vote on the school board, but we can do that. Then conservatives, you wait. You're going to love it, okay? You're going to love it. We're going to take control. Well, take control they did. As Nancy just told you, the original presentation was 3 weeks ago. That was plagiarized material from Wikipedia, and I heard a pro-terrorist website and another one. Then this time around, what they did, meaning the DPI under Catherine Truitt's direction, is put systemic racism back into the unpacking documents. That is far worse than just in these standards because, again, you can bet your bottom dollar it's going to be taught. Gender identity. So I think you just saw that one. Was that the gender? No, this
is the racism one.
Okay, so what we're looking at is gender identity. Now we're looking at it. So gender identity, I want you guys to know, we've been talking about this, it's a huge part of SEL, social emotional learning, a tremendous part, and it's part of critical race theory. And so when kids are being taught to identify their gender and look around for it, the reason this was put back in the standards is because social emotional learning, the CASEL SEL that we've been fighting so hard for, by the way, the stuff that's embedded in Jamie Falkenberry's wife's stuff that he's lobbying for, in other words, Catherine Truitt's right-hand man has a wife that's lobbying for this stuff, which is why we're getting conflicting stories. Yeah. This stuff is in our standards now. We need to cut the bull crap, stop the mess, and get this out. And oh, by the way, pass 324. Yeah. That's what you're looking at right from the glossary right there, you guys.
Yeah, it's really strange because originally back in February, if you remember, there was a huge brouhaha over the drafts and the word systemic racism was changed to racism, and systemic discrimination, I think, was changed to discrimination, and gender identity was just going to be identity. And it was actually, when that was changed, I think the vote for the original standards, James Ford wanted to go back to the other draft that had systemic and gender identity in it, and they didn't vote for that. And so supposedly that was a pseudo win in these standards.
Well, Catherine Truitt took a victory lap.
Yes.
She patted herself on the back. She's been, at every GOP and every conference that will have her, and she's taking credit for, I took systemic racism and gender identity out of the social studies standards. Well, apparently under her leadership, it's back in.
Yeah, it's back in. And originally, news articles were written about it, about the changes. But then it was interesting because when they put the plagiarized version, it sounds so terrible, the plagiarized version of the glossary.
The truth sounds damn terrible when we're talking about
when
this
they put that forth, they didn't have systemic racism in there or gender identity. So within a week and a half from putting forth the uncited version of the glossary, someone put in there systemic racism and gender identity as separate sub-definitions with citations. So it was purposeful, and those words were supposed to be struck, and now they're official. Interesting stuff. And, I have on video the comments. I can play it.
Go ahead and play it. What is this from? What are we listening to?
So this is the meeting with the revised curriculum supporting materials, including this new glossary, the newest version with the citations and with gender identity and systemic racism in it.
What date?
Oh, it's like mid-June. I can't remember the exact date.
Is this the first glossary or second?
It's the second.
Okay, so this is what you're going to listen to is Catherine at the meeting?
Yes.
The superintendent at the meeting where the standards are being rolled out with gender identity and systemic racism put back into it.
In the glossary, yeah.
Into it, yes. Go ahead.
And of note, just so you know, the Republicans present at this meeting, which was Olivia Oxendine, and maybe it was Amy White.
On the board, on the state school board, guys.
Republicans voted against these curriculum documents. Mark Robinson wasn't there, and a couple other people weren't there. But this was in mid-June with the cited official version of the glossary that now includes systemic racism and gender identity.
Before I open the floor for questions, Superintendent Truitt, is there anything you'd like to add to that presentation?
Thank you for your introduction, Ms. Kamnitz, to this agenda item. And in the interest of time, I will leave it with that.
does the recommendation come with your, are you concurring with the recommendation of the staff to approve it?
Absolutely, I am concurring. I have personally viewed every single page of what is being presented today, and am entirely satisfied with the work that's been done. And I would like to thank Maureen Stover for immediately jumping in and offering to help and executing on that offer in writing the glossary alongside my colleagues and me.
Thank you.
Okay, so there we have it. The only thing that's been executed is the public school system under the leadership of Catherine Truitt. So again, I'm just going to break this down for you. We have been telling you from the start that something is rotting from the top down of our public school systems. It starts at the DPI and the state school board, who absolutely positively does have control over a lot of the things that go on in the district. So that something is absolute corruption. Number one, Catherine Truitt, who you just heard, her right-hand man, who's also on the same party as her, who also openly criticizes critical race theory, doesn't want it in the schools. His wife is a lobbyist for critical race theory companies. Number one. Number two, Catherine Truitt, again, has been to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting saying, I do not support critical race theory. I took these things out of the standards. Please congratulate me. Do not listen to these liars at our organization who has written story after story exposing them. And now you hear for yourself. You will see today we have just filed an ethics complaint with the Board of Ethics. We also looked at some filings that Jamie Falkenberry had where he had to disclose what his wife was doing for a conflict of interest. And I don't think he was honest on those filings, let's just say. And there were 3 of them in 1 year, extraordinary, right one behind the other, seeming to correct each other. So we're going to have all of that out. But again, we will not tolerate corruption at the DPI. This is our taxpayer money. This is bull crap what's going on. And we are completely vindicated. There is absolutely a reason why we should look at the state, and we are not going to stop.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. This whole social studies thing has bothered me from the beginning, that we have to pay for this. And then to find out that, they had a couple months to work on this glossary, and it was such an important document. It defines all these words and the standards, and to come out and have it be 100% biased, 100% progressive, and under a CRT framework. And then to find out from Terry Stoops and the John Locke Foundation, that was even more than that. It was plagiarized, essentially, and appropriated. And then to turn it around in a week and a half, this important document, all of a sudden, with all these Merriam-Webster definitions, ironically.
Well, there was also Aspen Institute, which is the George Soros Institute.
And they ended up, whoever snuck it, put in systemic racism, even though it was supposed to be struck in gender identity. And then under racism, they cite the Aspen Institute, which is like some progressive global organization. Like,
who's at the top, Nancy?
Yeah, no, it's the leader that's responsible. And she said in the meeting recording that she looked through every single page. So, and was supportive of passing. It was in line with wanting to pass these curriculum supporting documents, even though the Republicans on the board voted against it. So ultimately, it's really confusing. It's hard to keep up.
I don't think it's confusing.
Well, I mean, to the person who's not, if you're not paying like specific attention.
Correct.
If you're not following it very closely and going to the primary documents, if you're just following it in like the news story, then you think, okay, systemic racism isn't going to be in there. But lo and behold, it's in
right. There. So it's kind of like being robbed with your own gun.
Yeah.
Because we gave a lot of trust. We took a lot of flack over on this side of the aisle. Again, what we have told you all along, everything that we've reported at edfirstnc.org, all of our news stories, we've never, ever been asked for a retraction. I've been a journalist for 5 years. I've never been asked for a retraction. I've never had to give one. And my record stands exactly the same tonight. The people who were at the top denying the stuff was going on, you heard her words. You saw what's going on in the glossary. We're going to throw that up there again. We have been had. Now, the next steps are we must absolutely demand that 324 gets passed. It is sitting on the Senate floor or in a committee right now. It has to get passed because the DPI is totally, utterly corrupt, cannot be counted on, and they are working against us. That's something that you have not heard me say before. They are working against us. They have a motive to do that with Jamie Falconberry's wife. They've been compromised. We're going to write a press release tomorrow about the ethics complaint we filed. We're going to write a story tomorrow again on the social studies standards. Here we go again.
Yeah, and there's been no accountability. I haven't heard of any accountability within the bureaucracy for the people who, you would think that if you put forward as part of your paid position and you had a couple months to do it, you would think that if you put forward unsighted definitions for the state, for everyone representing North Carolina, for the next 5 to 7 years, and you didn't cite anything and you just got them off of CRT and Wikipedia websites, you would think that person would no longer be working for you.
They get paid way more than teachers, you guys. These people that we're talking about at this upper echelon, they get paid probably twice or 3 times the amount even of teachers. And look, when you plagiarize at UNC, your ass is out of there. When you plagiarize at a school, you are suspended. Plagiarism is coming. We said this from the highest levels of our education system. Corruption is coming from the highest levels of our education system. Catherine Truitt is saying, on the one hand, she's not against critical race theory. You cannot support the DPI and Catherine Truitt now. You cannot support them and support abolishing critical race theory until Jamie Falconberry is gone. That's for one. And another, she needs to be pulled in and held for account for approving these standards. These standards, this glossary is critical race theory.
Yeah. They put it in, and she said she looked through it. And the Aspen Institute is a citation, and gender identity. This was all stuff that wasn't supposed to be in there, that she went around to meetings to say. And then on top of that, as far as I'm concerned, this is more support for the addition of that Section 8 and 6, I can't remember, it starts with a 6, the bill that's going to delay the standards for a year, because the legislators need to step in and say, enough is enough. Like, you guys put in a glossary that's totally unacceptable, a fireable offense, and you turn it around a week and a half, just completely reversing a lot of these definitions and then inserting back in what was supposed to be taken out. Like, the standards need to be delayed. They need to be sorted out. The system needs to be revised.
We have an utter mess, and it's being led by people who are lying. I don't say lying. I say misled, mistruth. Lying. They're not telling the truth at all. So the State Board of Education, just to give you a rundown, the State Board of Ed was held responsible for passing standards. In fact, Jamie Falconberry, when he was with Dan Forrest years ago in 2019, he was leading the charge. Hey, have a personal finance class, and you guys at the State Board, please redo these social studies standards. So he was leading the charge. Now we know that when Catherine Truitt keeps blaming her predecessor, she's actually talking about Jamie Falconberry, who was with Dan Forrest, who was on the education committee, who had a hand in all of this, and who did nothing to stop it, actually. And so we're talking about the State Board of Education passed these standards. Then Catherine Truitt, and her role at the DPI, is to come up with the unpacking documents, which means the stuff that's going to be rolled out to the teachers. This also includes teachers training, right? So the first iteration of the glossary, we told you, it was plagiarized. They had to go back to the drawing board and do it again. The second iteration, she's putting in exactly the things she said she took out, she said she doesn't approve of. It's in, we've been had, I don't know what else to say.
It's just, it is really depressing. The amount of people who are taking advantage of our education system for either,
making money off of it,
for either financial or ideological gain is truly just unnerving. And the cost is children and their education. Children have a finite period of time, and they have a finite period, and there's all this money, and so many other people are making money off of it and fighting over ideologies, and it's the children who are getting hurt. And I just can't, I never imagined that starting to follow what was going on at the state level when I first listened to the first social studies standards arguments would lead to this. Like, it's just, I have no words. It's embarrassing.
It's infuriating. It's infuriating because Catherine Truitt got the trust of a lot of people. Personnel is policy. We have told you guys there are several hires that she has made that are followers of James Ford. James Ford is the most radical person on the state school board. He's an out and out racist. He hates America. He hates white people. He hates children. He just hates. So she's made some bad hires with that. The guy that she hired that was, oh, you can trust him. He's a conservative. Well, he's not. Or if he ever was, he can be had, and he's been had. So we've been lied to. This is absolutely dreadful. You're right, Michelle. It's disgraceful. A lot of people trust, but look, you are as a custodian of the public school system, and you're you're dishonest about the glossary. You're dishonest about what you're going to do. You're dishonest about attacking us, taking us out, that we're liars. Every single thing that we've said about the DPI, every single thing that we've said is irrefutable. It is absolutely true. And when given the chance to refute it, we're still waiting.
Yeah. And just a reminder, I mean, I was a mom who had no intention of being
and a surgeon. Somebody asked, are you a surgeon? I mean, look, you're a surgeon. You're very precise.
Yeah. I approach things, you have to approach things as, well, you know, I mean, I joke, but it's true. Like, I worry about going to work. Okay, if I miss this lab value or I miss this one thing, like, who's going to be maimed or harmed? And so you have to look at everything and be very detail oriented. And so that's just how
and dispassionate.
And sometimes it's an ugly finding that you weren't expecting. And this is certainly the
case. Cancer, if you will.
Yeah. And it's awful. And I certainly lean towards a political viewpoint, and I have ideologies in line with, you know, a certain side. And I'm very much anti-communism. I have family who were in Soviet labor camps under communism and Stalin, ancestors, and grew up with those stories and understood how terrible it is. And I am as anti-communist, you know, as one could possibly be. And to find this progressive stuff in our social studies standards, and that it's still there.
From both sides, you guys. Yeah. Being pushed from both sides. Both sides.
And forced on kids as a so-called education. It's a joke. And I'm very upset. I'm upset that my tax dollars are going towards this. I'm upset that kids aren't going to have the type of education that, you know, I had in my youth, which was much more neutral than this, and through public school. And that's where I'm coming from. And it's been a crazy journey.
I mean, they're pariahs. They're robbing our children of education. They're sitting up there getting paid six-figure jobs. You want to talk about six-figure job getting people that are liars. I think we know who that is. And they're being paid with our money. They're doing things to our kids. I've been saying, stop messing with other people's kids.
Yeah. And so we need HB 324 because it's going to protect not only against the anti-racist network, which I've talked about before, and how all these people know each other and have members on school boards and are paid, and equity groups and legislators involved with that. But it will also protect against, you know, potential lobbying, pushing for certain educational programs.
Lobbying.
Yeah, if that were to come.
Let's deep dive into that. So, you know, the interesting thing is in our ethics complaint, and we have it posted. Savannah, you're on this call. Would you post this up into the chat? So with our ethics complaint, we chronicle everything that the DPI did to destroy us. And I can tell you now, because it's going to be public, it included having a role in trying to get one of our volunteers fired from their regular job. It had a role, they had a role in having us deplatformed all over the state. They wanted to silence us. They had a role in getting 3 sheriffs out last week in order to prevent me from going to an event I was invited to. One could presume to get me arrested. 3 sheriffs. It's incredible. They have written defamatory stuff about us. They have made actually good people start to doubt what we are saying and to look away from the state, because if Bill 324 is passed, as my reading of it, would mean that companies like the one that Jamie's wife represented would not be able to do business in North Carolina anymore. And I think that he went all out to make sure that our credibility was completely destroyed, and that we would not be effective. Look, if we were not effective, he would not have to take us out. The DPI would not have to take us out. We were extremely effective. We were, and we are, and we're going to be. We're not going to allow this in our schools.
Yeah, and I would definitely, I wrote an open letter to Senator Berger, which Sloan was kind enough to post on her Ed First, because our official No Left Turn website is coming out around July 4th, so I don't have a place to post it yet. But Sloan was kind enough to post it because one of the arguments, so we've heard several arguments about why 324 might have problems. One came from Catherine Truitt herself, which was worried. She mentioned at a GOP event, which I happened to attend, that Apple and Google may be swaying opinions and may be too controversial to allow those companies to have it. And of course, you know, later on, a few days later, she retracted that statement and said the Republicans are very anti-CRT and on board with a bill that will serve everyone. But who knows? I mean, if they haven't been putting it through, maybe she was right. I don't know. The other one is this free speech argument, which actually is not applicable here because this is K through 12 education, and teachers
And public.
Teachers are supposed to teach to the state and local determined curriculum, which is why they want this progressive stuff in the state curriculum, because they know teachers have to teach to it. So teachers have free speech outside of that in the public sphere and on Twitter, whatever else. But within the classroom, like Stanley Kurtz so eloquently said when Sloan interviewed him, at that moment, they're supposed to teach to what their bosses say they're supposed to teach, which is the curriculum. So free speech doesn't really apply in the K through 12 realm. So HB 324 is completely legitimate. I think it's strong in that it has that aspect of, you know, keeping these networks and these snake oil race bait salesmen out of the classroom and not using our tax dollars to pay for that.
Yeah, you don't say. So snake oil, hired guns. We've been called hired guns that are being paid six figures to basically do a hit job that we aren't who we say we are, even though I'm a mom, you're a mom. I have the stretch marks to prove it. I'm telling you, we don't want to go there. But I'm telling you right now,
yeah,
it is amazing because what you are accused of, they are typically doing, and we're going to remember that because we have just begun to scratch the surface about the Critical Race Theory Inc. We've talked about it for a while. We never dreamed that it would be coming right at the top here. We never dreamed somebody in the highest education office would actually have a lobbyist for a wife who's doing this stuff. And somebody just said on the stream that when you are over the target, you're taking the most flack. Mm-hmm. We were certainly taking a lot of flack. We saw where it was coming from, and we did our due diligence. We will continue to do that. We just want to say that tonight. We're not stopping. So the ethics complaint is first. We've got a couple of others lined up.
That's awesome.
We will not tolerate corruption of the public school system on our watch and with our tax dollars.
Yeah, the people should be aware of what's going on. And I just, you know, this happened to me personally in a private school, similar to
both of us
experience where things were going on behind parents' backs secretly off campus by teachers, board members, et cetera, meeting to insinuate a secret curriculum that ended up being what is now called, you know, popularly called CRT, but essentially along the same lines, totally secret. I happened to hear a word that my daughter said in first grade that just I thought was odd. And so I Googled it and found this book, and it was totally atrocious. And I just kept following the information and figuring out who these people were on the board, who were they related to, who was coming to give this training, which was secret, and all of these things, and uncovered this whole network and continued to follow it. And when I tried to approach that school with this information and some very radical, upsetting things.
Were you called a racist?
I wasn't called a racist, but I was. I was absolutely ignored. No one could answer it. They said this book, which was totally inappropriate, was actually appropriate. And it was very upsetting. I'd been at the school for 7 years, had developed relationships with teachers. It was very upsetting to feel like you had been duped and lied to this whole time because a group of parents and board members decided that their ideology was more important than anyone else's.
Well,
to be involved, like I have no problem if people want to respond to criticisms point by point and say, well, actually, this is what happened. This is how we're looking at it. You know,
fair disagreements.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good in good faith.
Yeah. But then to add a paragraph that says you're trying to, I know these people and they're trying to make money. No. I mean, this happened to me personally. I saw a school decimated by this type of crap.
We've asked for a retraction.
I don't want money.
Yeah, we've asked for a retraction multiple times. I mean, the same guy that is writing all this stuff, no, we didn't do it, and these people are horrible liars. I mean, he's revealed as a horrible liar and getting paid more than six figures. So to sum it all up for you guys, we really wanted to give you an update is that, look, the DPI fundamentally cannot be trusted. We are asking for Jamie Falkenberry to be fired, to step down by end of business tomorrow. It's a great day, a great week to do it, July 4th. You know, he can go, he can have an extended period of time with his family. We're asking for him to step down or be fired. We're asking for Catherine Truitt to come clean. We're also asking for a retraction of the many lies that she herself has told about us. Why are we petty? Are we petty? No, we're not petty. Here's why. Because we're informing the public. Anyone who gets in the way of that with lies that are being paid for by our taxpayer dollars and all that should have to retract it when it's been showed that they're wrong. They're factually inaccurate.
Yeah, this just, again, it legitimizes the need for the legislature to delay these standards for a year. This hasn't been done on good faith. There's too many ideologues and too many things, too much incompetence going on without any accountability to allow this to be seriously presented to our kids of the state. I mean, it's even ridiculous. Ford, the original plagiarized version of the glossary, he still voted not to delay the approval. Like, he still wanted that glossary to go forth, he and Hall, I believe. So, I mean, he doesn't care if it's plagiarized or not, as long as it's along with his ideology. You know, like, this is.
I think this version suits him better.
Well, he got his way in this version because now systemic racism
James Ford won. You know, the one thing about James Ford, and I can't stand the man, he's never gone after me with lies. I'm going to tell you something tonight. James Ford has never gone after me with lies. Mm-hmm. And to my knowledge, he has not lied. He is who he says he is. He believes what he says he believes. He has not gone after me. And I'm telling you that is the exact opposite from the way we have been treated with the DPI. I'm telling you, it's time to cut the crap. It's time to cut the crap. Again, we're asking for Jamie Falkenberry to step down. We're asking for answers. I mean, Catherine Truitt needs to tell us why in the hell critical race theory is back on her watch in the glossary that she absolutely approved.
That really confused me. In fact, I delayed talking about it for a week or two. I mean, I posted initially with a question on our No Left Turn Facebook site. Like, I thought these were supposed to be struck. Like, why is this in not just defined but cited? And what's the Aspen Institute have to do with anything? And I like almost gave it a couple of weeks to see if it would somehow magically disappear once they put it on the website, but it didn't.
No,
it's still there.
It's not, and it's not going anywhere. The DPI is completely corrupt. The State Board of Ed, we already know, is completely compromised between Eric Davis and James Ford on there, just writing roughshod. And so, we need to go back into the old days where either it's going to be the state, the legislature has control, or at the local board, and they give them autonomy, because what's in between is a mud sandwich is what it is. They need to be gone.
Yeah, the local boards have a lot of power, absolutely. And
not with SCI, not with SEL.
There should be a lot of attention on them. I absolutely agree, but they don't necessarily do their due diligence either. They don't necessarily know. I just listened to a board meeting the other night presenting SEL, in a Western county, and using the NCDPI model, which is CASCL, CASL, which has the CRT stuff embedded in it. And it was total trust and faith. Like, this is what the NCDPI has set up for us.
I'm sorry, but we should be able to trust the DPI. We deserve, if we're paying, I mean, look, let's make no mistake about it. The budget, I think it's $181 billion. 56% of the state budget is spent through DPI. The DPI is spending, they are the ones that spend money. So I want to tell you again that Jamie Falkenberry, his role inside the DPI, he is a lobbyist for the DPI. In other words, he is the guy who goes and says to the legislature, okay, we need budget for this program, that he's asking for taxpayer monies for certain programs. Now we understand that those monies are for programs that his wife is getting paid for. There is a huge conflict of interest. This is rotten from the head up. So he is not doing the work of the people. He is asking for money from the legislature for programming that is critical race theory based, like we always said. And that is why he said we're lying. Why? Because he doesn't want the legislature to know that. He's lobbying for the same thing as his wife's lobbying for, and we are trying to stop them.
Just trying to be transparent with the people. I just want to go through these documents and see if what they say lines up with what's in the documents. And that hasn't been happening. Certainly not on the social studies side. And it doesn't appear that everyone's been honest with certain relationships either. and
we're just beginning. We've got more, way more.
Yeah.
And so look, it's the swamp. If you want to say it's the swamp, we're going to drain the swamp. Whether or not you like Trump, I don't care. It's just what it is. We are going to drain the swamp. There's copious amounts of money that's being changing hands. And I find it very interesting now when we look back in retrospect that Catherine Truitt is passing the buck and saying, oh, well, the Republican leadership isn't going to do anything about this because they're concerned about company special interests. Turns out people on our staff are as well. And so we wanted to get you this news as quickly as we could. Again, we've got that posted up. Savannah, we've got it posted up on our website. She's already put that up in our chat. Where we put the ethics complaint up, we will put all the primary documents up so that you can look at it yourself. You need to be the investigator here. You need to be the detective. You need to get to the bottom of it. Let's put this up just one more time before we leave. So gender identity, again, the reason why this is up, because I promise you this, as sure as I'm sitting here right now in front of you, this stuff is in SEL, which is in math, homeroom, science, reading.
Yeah, they put it in every subject. I even had a clip on Rumble with a screen recording from a teacher training session from within the NCDPI with the comparison of the J.D. Salinger and that awful other book, the Mexican Daughter book, and it was SEL more than teaching kids to be nice, and it was English class. So, even if, however, someone at the head of the DPI or whoever wants to define it, that doesn't mean that that's what it's going to be in practice at all. And so, yeah, we need to delay the standards. We need to write in support of that. Tell the legislator what's going on with the glossary and that this is a mess. It's been totally inconsistent with what the public has been told. And then we need to hold the Republicans, to the word and say, okay, if it's not because of Apple and Google, then bring it to the floor.
Yeah.
And get your name on supporting it.
Well, Republicans are on the hook, quite frankly, because a central part of the Republican plank is stamping out critical race theory. Right. That's why Catherine Truitt is running around to every GOP that she can to say, I am not for critical race theory. This is horrible. She's saying one thing, she's doing quite the other. And so Republicans, it's on you. If this is indeed a priority for you, then you will get this together. You will pass the 324. You will make sure the social studies standards are halted immediately, and you will stop the nonsense going on in the DPI. They are not a legitimate broker. They are working against us. Again, it's like being robbed with your own freaking gun.
No accountability.
None. None. So we're disgusted. We know that you are too. Again, what can you do? You need to call tomorrow. You need to call, go by, write. We need to raise absolute hell. We're thinking about putting together a rally. And so that's the other news we'll get to you after the July 4th weekend. And so we have got to take to the streets. Look, we are being sold a bag of dog manure because Republicans say that they're for it, not for it. Both sides are giving us a runaround. This has to stop. This is about our children, our state, our country.
Yeah. And they have direct ties to Cooper's office, a lot of these people in the DPI. Married to people who work for Cooper or whatever. And
swamp.
Yeah, it's a total swamp. And it's Cooper's DPI, and it's a disaster.
And Biden's.
And unfortunately, some people on the conservative side who haven't been so forthright, maybe. So, it just needs to stop. This is nonsense because our children are getting hurt. This is not adults. These are kids, and they deserve the best.
Right. So I want you to share this. Again, we've got these documents up. You'll have something tomorrow where you can share everyone needs to know that Catherine Truitt's right-hand man, married to a lobbyist. He hadn't been honest about that in his filings, by the way. Tis, that's a misdemeanor, if that's true. And we need them to come clean, and he needs to go. All right. Have a good night, guys. And Nancy?
Yeah.
We'll have to be doing this like in person.
It's
all the
weird.
time. It is weird. It's weird to see you.
It is weird to see you in
It's
person.
weird to not like be worrying that my kids are going to come in because we're in the office
Yeah,
tonight.
no, mine too, right?
So we have a mom's night out at the office. So, all right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Have